President Trump is vowing to buy a Tesla after the company's stock plunged.
Shares down more than 5% today, with the stock on pace to notch a seventh straight down week.
Mexico and Canada didn't just block Tesla, they erased it. This is the first time two allies have simultaneously blacklisted an American tech titan, and they did it without warning. There were no negotiations, no delays, just a signature, and then total economic decapitation. $146.3 billion in value, gone. Starlink contracts canceled, tariffs, nuclear, and now the rest of the world is watching. Why? Because this wasn't about manufacturing, it was about Musk, about power, about payback. So here's what no one's telling you. Why is Tesla being isolated like a hostile state? What just shattered the company's global supply lines? And how is this about to rip into your economy, your job, your future? What's happening? 100%. That was the number that detonated across North America like an economic grenade. Canada didn't protest. It didn't threaten. It didn't negotiate. Instead, with the quiet authority of a nation that had been pushed one too many times, it pulled the trigger on a policy that would cripple one of the most valuable tech empires in American history. A 100% tariff on all Tesla vehicles entering the country. Not a partial block, not a delay tactic. A full-blown ban, sealed behind paperwork that needed no speech to explain itself. Tesla was no longer welcome. Overnight, the math became impossible. A Model Y that once cost 65,000 Canadian dollars now cost 130,000. Buyers froze. Dealerships were paralyzed. Orders vanished, and the ripple was immediate. A $66 million contract for Starlink satellite services was terminated within hours. That contract had been set to deliver high-speed internet to hundreds of remote Canadian communities. It was more than a business arrangement. It was a lifeline, and Canada cut it. But this wasn't just about Tesla's bottom line. It was symbolic. A country that had long played the role of a quiet partner decided it would no longer be complicit in fueling a company it believed was undermining its economy and sovereignty. And for Elon Musk, it was more than a financial blow. It was personal. His flagship brand had been expelled, not through a scandal, not through a lawsuit, but through a single economic maneuver that wiped billions in value off the map. While Tesla scrambled to respond, another neighbor was preparing its own strike, like what you're hearing. Hit subscribe. We break stories before the headlines do. Now back to the takedown. Mexico's counterpunch. Mexico didn't need a press conference. It needed only to stop the trucks. Within 72 hours of Canada's tariff shockwave, Mexican officials delivered a blow of their own. Critical Tesla components, battery packs, sensors, electronic modules were halted at the border. Export licenses were suspended. Paperwork stalled in bureaucratic purgatory. And for Tesla's U.S. factories in Texas and California, that was a death sentence. Without those components, nothing moved. Vehicles on the assembly line sat unfinished. Robotic systems blinked idle. Employees, hundreds of them, were sent home with no timeline for return. It was the nightmare scenario Musk had always gambled against. Total operational immobility. Mexico didn't stop at mere disruption. It began redirecting those same components toward new trade negotiations with China and the European Union. The message was unmistakable. If the United States continued to escalate its economic brinkmanship, Mexico would find other partners, and Tesla would be the sacrificial offering. For a company built on speed, vertical integration, and just-in-time logistics, this move wasn't just disruptive. It shattered the illusion that Tesla could survive political isolation. And while Musk's top executives raced to re-engineer supply lines, the damage was already done. The walls weren't just closing in from the outside. They were also crumbling from within. The rebate rebellion. Provinces turn against Musk. While federal governments fired missiles, Canadian provinces launched their own rebellion, one made of cuts, not contracts. British Columbia was the first to strike. With no warning and little fanfare, the province announced Tesla would be excluded from all electric vehicle rebate programs moving forward. No subsidies, no credits, no help. This wasn't a trivial move. British Columbia had been Tesla's strongest Canadian market. For years, local buyers enjoyed rebates of up to $5,000 per vehicle. Combined with federal programs, it made Tesla ownership within reach for middle-class Canadians. Now those incentives were gone. The justification: the province claimed it could no longer justify supporting a company aligned with anti-Canadian economic interests. And like dominoes, other provinces followed. Quebec reviewed its EV incentive structure. Alberta debated cutting Tesla out entirely. By the end of the month, a nationwide subsidy collapse for Tesla was well underway. And just as Tesla's Canadian footprint began to disintegrate, another pillar of Musk's business was quietly pulled out from under him: Starlink sabotage. The Starlink deal was supposed to be historic: $66 million, hundreds of remote communities, internet access where fiber optic infrastructure had failed. Musk had promised to bring the stars closer to Canada's furthest towns. Instead, the government chose to go dark. In an unexpected but surgical move, Canada terminated its national agreement with Starlink. The reason was not technical, it was political. Officials declared they would no longer fund projects tied to companies actively undermining Canada's economic sovereignty. In one sentence, Musk's satellite empire was blocked. For many of those communities, Starlink was more than a luxury. It was education, medicine, and communication. It was an opportunity to join the digital age. But Ottawa made it clear principles came before platforms. They were willing to delay their own technological future to send a message. Behind closed doors, the shock was absolute. Starlink had spent years positioning itself as the solution to rural internet gaps in North America. Now it was blacklisted in one of its most promising markets. And just like Tesla, it wasn't phased out slowly. It was cut off entirely and all at once. With both of Musk's flagships blocked at the border, the message was undeniable. Canada and Mexico weren't just rejecting his products, they were rejecting his presence. What came next would not be a negotiation, it would be an escalation, and the world was watching. $146.3 billion gone. Within hours of Canada's tariff announcement and the Starlink contract termination, Tesla's stock price began a steep descent that Wall Street hadn't seen since the dot-com implosion. The hit wasn't isolated to a few jittery investors. It was institutional. Vanguard, BlackRock, Fidelity, all titans of capital, began dumping shares. $146.3 billion. That's how much Tesla's market cap vaporized in just 29 trading days. And this wasn't because of earnings reports or product flops. This was geopolitical. The Canadian government had made a calculated strike, and the markets reacted in kind. What shook analysts most wasn't just the size of the collapse. It was the silence from Tesla's leadership. Elon Musk offered no press conference, no financial strategy, only cryptic tweets and defiant retweets. Behind the curtain, Tesla's boardroom was in chaos. Emergency calls to stabilize investor confidence failed. Credit lines began to freeze. Analysts from Morgan Stanley, Barclays, and Goldman Sachs revised their price targets downward, some by as much as 40%. Tesla was no longer just a risky bet, it was radioactive. Pension funds fled, mutual funds rebalanced. Retail investors, once loyal Musk disciples, rage quit their positions on social media, blaming politics, mismanagement, and tone-deaf leadership. As Tesla's ticker bled red, a larger panic began to form. What would happen if the most iconic electric vehicle company in the world wasn't just wounded, but doomed? And as the markets collapsed, something far more dangerous began to unfold. Not on Wall Street, but on Main Street. The EV price explosion. As Tesla vanished from Canadian and Mexican dealerships, a massive supply vacuum gripped the EV market. Consumers who had waited for months suddenly found themselves in bidding wars, not for new Teslas, but for used ones. Demand exploded, and with no new stock incoming, prices soared to absurd heights. In Toronto, a 2-year-old Model 3 sold for 20% more than its original sticker price. In Mexico City, Model Y owners were approached by flippers offering cash premiums on the spot. Rental car companies, once heavily reliant on Tesla fleets, began snapping up used inventory just to keep their services operational. And this wasn't just a Tesla problem. The shortage caused a cascading effect. Rivian, Lucid, Hyundai, and BYD saw unprecedented demand spikes. But none of them could ramp production fast enough to fill the hole Musk's company had left. Leases were delayed. Fleet orders were canceled. Ride-hailing platforms like Uber and Lyft raised prices as availability dried up. Even traditional gas-powered vehicles saw a resurgence as EV options disappeared. Governments that had pledged sweeping EV adoption targets now faced logistical nightmares. How could they hit sustainability goals when the cornerstone brand had been erased from 2 major markets? While consumers fought over what few EVs remained, another disaster was unfolding, this time inside America's own manufacturing heartland. Supply chain cancer, U.S. plants shut down. In a retaliatory move, Mexican authorities choked the export of key components assembled in Monterrey and Juarez: batteries, sensor arrays, and chassis wiring systems. These were the lifeblood of Tesla's American factories in Texas and California. Without them, production lines froze. By the third week of the embargo, Tesla's Austin Gigafactory had idled 2 major assembly zones. In Fremont, California, workers were told to go home indefinitely. Thousands of union and non-union employees across the South and Midwest were suddenly without shifts, paychecks, or clarity. Ford and GM, once envious of Tesla's speed, now watched as the vertical integration strategy Musk had bragged about turned into a prison. Tesla couldn't pivot. It couldn't outsource. It was stuck in its own system, bleeding cash and losing capacity. The term supply chain cancer began trending online. Vendors reported unpaid invoices. Transport hubs saw containers full of half-assembled parts rusting on the docks. For every day production halted, Tesla lost tens of millions in delayed revenue and operational overhead. And the workers? They faced furloughs, layoffs, and a grim return to an uncertain job market. And as factories dimmed and assembly lines slowed to a crawl, the political crisis at the heart of it all reached a boiling point in Washington. Washington's nightmare. President Trump had promised to bring manufacturing back. Instead, he brought it to its knees. The 100% tariff from Canada and Mexico's supply chain squeeze were direct responses to Trump's trade war escalation. But the backlash hit far harder than expected. Governors in Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania flooded the White House with desperate pleas. Union leaders, once skeptical allies, demanded the administration roll back its policies. The political cost skyrocketed. Trump's approval rating in industrial swing states plummeted. Auto manufacturers warned of mass layoffs. Financial networks aired segment after segment, showing rural families caught between nationalist rhetoric and real economic loss. Behind the scenes, even Republican senators began urging a strategic retreat. But retreating would mean admitting failure, and for Trump, that was unacceptable. Instead, he doubled down. At a press event, Trump called Tesla's losses collateral damage in a necessary economic war. The backlash was swift. Editorials lambasted the administration's arrogance. Protesters outside the Capitol waved signs reading, "Save our jobs, not your ego." Inside Tesla, the mood turned fatalistic. Executives no longer expected relief from Washington. Instead, they quietly began exploring bankruptcy protections, layoffs, and asset sales. And as Tesla's image crumbles, so does its standing in the eyes of the consumers who helped make it a global leader in electric vehicles. Dealership desertion. Tesla's fall from grace is not limited to the headlines or online conversations. It's now playing out in showrooms and parking lots across the world. In the wake of Canada's tariffs, political fallout, and a growing cultural revolt, Tesla dealerships are shutting down at an alarming rate. Once the heart of Tesla's retail strategy, these dealerships are now closing their doors as inventory piles up and sales grind to a halt. It wasn't supposed to be this way. Tesla had built one of the most innovative and efficient retail networks in the automotive world. Its direct-to-consumer sales model was a revolutionary shift, bypassing traditional dealerships in favor of sleek, minimalist showrooms that offered customers a direct connection to the brand. But with Tesla's global reputation tarnished and its vehicles out of reach for many consumers, the showroom model has all but collapsed. What's worse, Tesla's retail network isn't just shrinking, it's deteriorating in a way that threatens the entire future of the company. As dealerships close, Tesla faces the challenge of maintaining its direct-to-consumer sales model without a robust infrastructure. The company's once innovative approach to retail now looks like a relic of a bygone era, with no clear path forward. Without a strong retail presence, Tesla risks losing touch with the very consumers who helped it rise to dominance. Musk's mouth. At the heart of Tesla's crisis lies a man whose words have become as polarizing as they are powerful. Elon Musk, the visionary behind the electric vehicle revolution, is now his company's greatest liability. His outspoken political views, aggressive rhetoric, and frequent Twitter outbursts have turned him from a tech visionary into a deeply divisive figure. And in the process, he has turned Tesla into something it was never supposed to be, a political weapon. Musk's tendency to speak without a filter has always been a double-edged sword. While his boldness and audacity helped him disrupt the automotive and tech industries, it also made him a lightning rod for controversy. His vocal support for conservative causes, his public attacks on government officials, and his inflammatory comments about environmental regulations have alienated a large swath of Tesla's once loyal customer base. For Tesla's progressive supporters, Musk's statements have been a bridge too far. His support for politically charged causes, particularly those aligned with the far right, has created a rift between the company and the very values that once defined it. For many Tesla owners, the decision to buy a car wasn't just about the vehicle itself, it was about aligning with a vision for a cleaner, more sustainable future. But as Musk inserted himself further into the political spotlight, that vision became tainted. What's worse, Musk's influence over the company he founded has left Tesla vulnerable to the fallout from his personal brand. Tesla's customers, once drawn to the company for its mission and innovative spirit, now see it as a reflection of the man at the top. For many, Musk's increasingly controversial statements have made it impossible to support the brand they once admired. And this, in turn, has triggered a mass exodus of customers and investors alike. But the damage Musk has caused doesn't stop at public opinion. It extends to Tesla's bottom line. As the brand becomes increasingly associated with political extremism, Tesla faces a growing number of boycotts and public protests. Once viewed as a tech darling, Tesla is now a symbol of everything its critics despise: corporate elitism, political divisiveness, and unchecked power. The vandalism surge. Tesla's fall from grace has taken an even darker turn. As the brand becomes increasingly controversial, the backlash against it has turned violent. Across Europe and North America, Tesla vehicles and properties are being targeted by vandals. Once a symbol of progress and innovation, Tesla has become a lightning rod for anger, resentment, and political frustration. Reports of vandalism have become alarmingly frequent. In France, an entire Tesla dealership was set on fire by unknown assailants, causing millions of dollars in damage and sending a clear message: Tesla is no longer safe, not just financially, but physically. The destruction wasn't limited to dealerships. Tesla vehicles themselves have become targets. Broken windows, slashed tires, and offensive graffiti are now common sights for Tesla owners in cities like Los Angeles, Toronto, and Berlin. These attacks are not random acts of rebellion. They are a response to the way Tesla has become intertwined with politics. In Germany, the UK, and the United States, Tesla is viewed not just as an electric vehicle manufacturer, but as a symbol of everything that critics find wrong with the current political and economic systems. Tesla's association with Elon Musk's controversial political views has transformed it into a lightning rod for anger from both sides of the political spectrum. For many Tesla owners, the violence is a reminder that their decision to support the brand has become a political act. In some cases, it's a personal revenge. In others, it's a protest against corporate greed, political extremism, and the erosion of democratic values. What was once a car that represented the future is now a target for destruction. And as these acts of vandalism continue to escalate, Tesla faces an existential threat. The company's public image is in freefall, and its once loyal customer base is now afraid to be seen with the brand. The symbol of a bright future is now synonymous with fear, division, and conflict. This is no longer just a corporate crisis, it's a cultural and political war that Tesla and its founder Elon Musk may not be able to survive. The employee exodus. It started quietly, a few resignations here and there, an engineer moving to a rival, a designer citing burnout, a production lead accepting a better offer. But within 6 months it became a hemorrhage. Tesla, the once mythic employer that had drawn the best and brightest from around the world, was bleeding talent at an unprecedented rate. In 2024 alone, more than 15% of Tesla's core workforce walked away. And these weren't average workers. These were the minds behind the company's software, battery systems, supply chain logistics, and signature vehicle designs. Elon Musk's aggressive management style, already controversial in calmer times, became unbearable under crisis. As tariffs cut off Tesla from Canada and Mexico, internal pressure spiked. Workers faced round-the-clock demands, last-minute design pivots, and emergency production reassignments. The company that once thrived on mission-driven culture had become a pressure cooker of fear, fatigue, and frustration. Those leaving Tesla weren't just disappearing into anonymity. They were being welcomed with open arms by rivals. Rivian, Lucid Motors, BYD, and Hyundai began aggressively recruiting Tesla defectors, offering higher pay, more flexible working conditions, and, most critically, a promise to keep politics out of product. This wave of brain drain didn't just hurt Tesla's current production line, it disrupted the pipeline of future innovation. The long-awaited redesigns, new battery architectures, and autonomous driving advancements were suddenly on hold. Departments were understaffed, deadlines were missed, and prototypes sat idle. The morale collapse was impossible to ignore. Anonymous posts from current and former employees flooded professional forums, describing internal chaos, mismanagement, and a leadership team more focused on public image than product quality. Tesla, once a symbol of visionary purpose, now looked like a company at war with itself. And just as leadership scrambled to patch the talent gap, they were confronted with an even more suffocating reality. The very production model that once set them apart had become their greatest liability. Vertical integration backfires. Tesla's vertical integration was once considered its secret weapon. In an industry reliant on sprawling supplier networks, Musk had bet everything on keeping production in-house. It worked brilliantly until it didn't. When Canada and Mexico cut Tesla off, that same integration became a trap. There was no backup plan, no redundancy, no flexibility. Every Tesla rolled off assembly lines powered by critical components that could no longer be imported. Battery modules built in Mexico. Wiring harnesses shipped through Canadian ports. Specialized sensors and chips routed through supply depots now blocked by trade retaliation. Unlike traditional automakers that could quickly shift suppliers or ramp up contracts with offshore partners, Tesla's model was rigid, centralized, and dependent on a seamless flow that no longer existed. Internally, executives scrambled to adjust. Plans were drafted to localize certain parts of production, but the timeline for such a pivot was measured in years, not weeks. Suppliers outside North America weren't eager to take on Tesla's volume needs overnight. Worse, many had already reallocated capacity to Tesla's competitors, seeing them as safer bets in a volatile trade environment. As weeks turned to months, Tesla's production schedules collapsed. Gigafactories in Texas and California began operating at partial capacity. The Model 2, Tesla's much-hyped next-gen vehicle, missed its launch window entirely. Customers grew impatient. Dealerships reported ballooning wait lists and refund requests. The brand's reliability rating plummeted. It was a cruel twist. The very system Musk had hailed as Tesla's long-term moat had now turned into a prison. And as production faltered in North America, across the Atlantic, Tesla's most critical overseas market was beginning to unravel. Europe walks away. Sales in Germany plummeted by over 70%. The reasons weren't just logistical, they were emotional. European consumers had grown weary of Musk's political posturing. His alignment with the American far right, his inflammatory statements, and his antagonism toward environmental regulation turned European regulators and customers alike against him. Governments responded swiftly. EV subsidies that once supercharged Tesla's growth were revoked. Local partnerships were canceled. Media outlets stopped covering Tesla as a tech pioneer and began portraying it as a liability. Inside Gigafactory Berlin, production targets were slashed. New hiring was frozen. Entire departments were placed under review. Reports leaked of management considering partial shutdowns. Dealerships across Europe slashed prices, trying to clear out unsold inventory. But even steep discounts couldn't reignite demand. Tesla had not just lost market share, it had lost credibility. Consumers who once waited 6 months for a Model Y now chose Volkswagens, Renaults, and BYDs without hesitation. What had begun as a geopolitical trade dispute in North America had now metastasized into a global brand rejection. And as Tesla's markets dried up, its workforce imploded, and its production froze. One question lingered louder than ever. Can Tesla survive without the continent that made it? The endgame. Can Tesla survive without North America? By early 2025, Tesla found itself in an unthinkable position. Cut off from Canada, crippled by Mexico, collapsing in Europe. What remained was a shrinking U.S. customer base, a battered workforce, and a supply chain in ruins. Tesla was not just losing market share, it was losing strategic oxygen. Without Canada, it had no northern market or access to key raw materials. Without Mexico, it had no southern trade partner or modular component lifeline. And without Europe, it had no international demand anchor. Internally, board members began asking what had once been unthinkable. Was it time for Elon Musk to step aside? Investors were losing confidence. Government relations had broken down. Consumers no longer trusted the brand. Musk's persona, once the core of Tesla's mythos, had become its heaviest liability. But beyond leadership, the real crisis was existential. Tesla had always been more than a car company. It was a symbol of the future, a promise of clean energy, innovation, and progress. Now it had become a cautionary tale, proof that no brand, no matter how iconic, could survive political recklessness, supply chain inflexibility, and global economic isolation. Production slowed to a crawl. Share prices flatlined. Recruitment dried up. Tesla, the company that had once dominated every EV conversation, was now whispered about in past tense. The electric empire had fallen out of favor, out of reach, and possibly out of time. What comes next? That answer no longer lies in press conferences or shareholder meetings. It lies in the factories, in the streets, and in the homes of the customers who once believed. Tesla's endgame has begun, and survival is no longer guaranteed. Tesla isn't just fighting for its market cap anymore. It's fighting for survival against governments, supply chains, and its own image. So what do you think? Is this the end of Tesla's dominance? Or can Elon Musk pull off one last miracle? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read everyone. And if you want to stay ahead of the chaos in tech, trade, and global markets, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next collapse, you'll hear it here first.